Hi everybody, and welcome to another week of Menopause Matters live. Live here in the Take Control of Your Menopause Facebook group, but you might be watching this on catch up on or on a YouTube channel, on my YouTube channel rather. We're on week 5. I've done 5 of these. It's gone very quickly. And so last week, if you missed it, I interviewed Vicky, a client of mine, and we talked about her journey from chronic fatigue to finally feeling like herself again. The week before that, we did fat loss resistance. I've done hair loss and a few others. So welcome if you're watching. Hi Viv, nice to see you. If you have any questions, just pop them in the comments, and if I can see them, I will answer them. Otherwise, I will answer them in the comments afterwards. So we're talking today about mental health and moods, and that can be mood swings, low moods, anxiety, whatever it is for you. And during those years in our 40s and our 50s, and I think that there is a tendency for the health industry to put it always down to the menopause, just purely menopause, and everything related to mental health is because of your changing hormones, your estrogen perhaps going crazy in the earlier part of your perimenopause years and then dropping away, the loss of progesterone, which can happen actually very early on for some women, which causes even more problems with estrogen. And it indeed can impact us in many ways. It can cause drops in mood. It can cause actually, massive mood swings, especially when estrogen starts to go crazy. And the loss of progesterone can certainly impact us on our sleep as well, which then of course impacts on our moods and mental health. But if you've tried HRT and perhaps it's worked for some things but it hasn't helped with this, or perhaps you've tried it and it didn't suit you, it could be that you were on the wrong type, it could be that you were on the wrong dose, it could be that you weren't ready for it, it could be that you weren't ready for the estrogen, only the progesterone, and so on. There's so many factors. But whatever the case, we have to look at other options when we are looking at our mental health, full stop. And that doesn't matter whether you're on HRT or you're not. We still should be looking at the body as a whole and not just putting everything down to our changing hormones, because it's not ever just our changing hormones. We have to understand the impact from other aspects of our makeup, including very much our minerals, because minerals impact on everything. I say it so much, I feel like I'm constantly repeating myself, but I think because for many women it's so new to them, they don't hear about this a lot. I'm just going to keep saying it. Minerals are the spark plugs of your body. Nothing works properly without them. You cannot bring your body back to balance without minerals. And minerals impact on our sex hormones as well, which I'm going to come on to. So before I go into the individual minerals, which impact mental health and moods the most, I want to talk about the basics of energy production, which are also linked to minerals. I talk a lot about metabolism, as this is how we make energy. And it's important to remember that without good metabolism, there's poor energy production. And if there's poor energy production, it equals poor moods. You may have noticed that, when you have no energy, your moods dip, or you at least feel flat. And there is absolutely a direct correlation. And hand in hand with this is our thyroid function. In fact, it's my belief that many women who are diagnosed with, depression and who are put on antidepressants might actually have a thyroid dysregulation, and improving their thyroid function and thus their energy production and their metabolic speed would improve their moods. And with the use of any medications, I believe they are only helpful if we also work on looking for the root cause. Otherwise, people get onto these things and then they never come off them. And they don't come without their own issues to the body. You know, an antidepressant can absolutely be helpful for some women in certain periods of time to help them get through and to help them feel better and to help them function. You know, I'm not anti the use of them at all, but my belief is we should also be working on the body's physiology at the same time so that people don't just get stuck on them with no way out. Like, why are you feeling low? There's always a reason, there's a root cause. And antidepressants is, you know, a plaster, it's a sticking plaster. It's not actually getting to the root of whatever is causing that imbalance in the first place. So what's the link between the metabolic speed, thyroid and low moods? Well, our cells have little engines in them, and they're called mitochondria. And those little engines take nutrients from our food and they turn them into energy. We call it ATP. So first off, if you're somebody who is struggling with weight and you're dieting and you're cutting your food intake low, or you're exercising low to try and keep your weight at bay, and you're not eating enough, this in turn can affect energy production, because as I just said, energy production requires nutrients to to create that ATP, which is the energy. So it's kind of a vicious circle. And a lot of women who have got thyroid problems will do that because they can't lose weight. So what do? They start cutting the calories or cutting this out or cutting that out and exercising more until the point where the body goes, no, not going to happen anymore. Can't do that. And will put the brakes on and actually physically force you to slow down. And when you've got to that place where you literally can't muster the energy, then you've got to take a different approach, because it's not going to work. Your thyroid system influences how much energy those little engines make. And if we don't have enough thyroid hormones getting into our cells, and remember, I keep on talking about this, if you haven't heard me say it before, it doesn't matter how much thyroid hormone you produce from your gland, if it's not getting into the cells, you might as well not be producing it. You know, just measuring how much thyroid hormone you're producing isn't enough. And then if we can't get it into the cells, we can't make enough energy, and including things like heat, which is why women with suboptimal thyroid function will often feel cold. Basically, the whole body slows down, including heating production, you know, so, everything slows down, moods slow. So we become flatter. We can't muster motivation, the energy to do things, cognitive function is impacted, and so on. And I think it's really difficult for women to kind of determine, you know, I have a lot of women tell me, well, I went to the GP and I explained my symptoms and they're wanting to give me antidepressants. And I don't feel depressed. It's like, how do you define it? How do you define depression? I feel flat. I can't get going. I haven't got my motivation, my drive, but I'm not sad. And I think that might be a way to kind of differentiate. So anyone who's struggling with low moods should always also be looking at their thyroid function as a baseline, and that's where minerals and mineral testing is so good, because we can pick up on suboptimal thyroid function way before it gets to the thyroid gland and would ever be picked up by your GP anyway. And so when looking at the metabolism and thyroid function on a mineral test, we're looking at specific minerals and the ratios between those minerals. We're looking at your tissue calcium, potassium, your sodium, phosphorus and magnesium, and not just the levels, but the balance between those minerals as well tells us so much. Okay, so I've talked about the importance of looking at energy production and the thyroid, when we are looking at especially low moods. I'll talk about anxiety and kind of the opposite end of the spectrum afterwards. But minerals that affect our mental health can impact us in a low mood way, but also in anxiety and even hyperactivity as well. First off, we can't talk about mental health without talking about copper. You've probably heard me, if you followed me for a while, you've probably heard me talk about copper. I've talked about it this week on emails and posts. I did an email and post about it a couple of days ago, and how I found that I had copper toxicity, which explained a lot of things. And it's a common problem with women. In fact, it's becoming a problem with everybody, but more so women. And there's a reason for that. It's because of the contraceptive pill and the copper coil. And we know that there was a massive increase in copper issues, health issues, after the pill was introduced back in the 60s. And generationally, it's getting worse because we pass it from mother to child in utero, so through through when the baby's in the womb. So now children, this is why it's becoming a problem with boys as well, because it's passing to boys as well. But then we've got our daughters who are then starting periods and being put on the pill as well, and this is exacerbating. So it's kind of just, it's getting worse. And if you have a slowed metabolism, as so many of the women that I work with do, I mean, if you're here, chances are you do have a slow rather than a fast metabolism. And perhaps your thyroid is suboptimal, the thyroid system, perhaps your adrenals are struggling. If anything like that is going on, we can't transport it around the body, and then we can't get rid of it, we can't detox it, so it builds up. And it builds up in places we don't want to. Copper is an essential nutrient, don't get me wrong. It's vital for good health and for energy production. We need copper. It's not a toxic metal unless there's too much of it. Copper needs to be at that optimal amount, not too high. It's a bit like Goldilocks. We don't want it too high, we don't want it too low. Too much or too little is going to be unhealthy. Excess estrogen, as I said, and copper have adverse effects on women's health, and from a mental and a physical perspective. Excess copper and estrogen produce both physical and psychological problems. And when estrogen builds up and there's too much copper, when estrogen builds up, when we have too much estrogen, so perhaps estrogen dominance, copper builds up in the cells and the tissues. And when we can't get rid of it, as I said, because we've got slowed metabolism, slow adrenals, we store it, and it gets stored firstly in the liver and then the brain. And it's when it gets to the brain that we can start to have those problems with the effects that it can cause. Some women will experience immediate effects, and as it builds up in the tissues, it gets very tightly stored. And it can remain there for years, decades even. Mine is definitely from, I was put on the pill for heavy periods when I was, I think, 16, if I remember, 15 or 16. And then I was on it for quite a long time. And it can become a problem if it can be that far back that it was caused. In terms of what are the symptoms of copper toxicity or issues with copper, the more of these symptoms you have, the more likely there's copper toxicity. And I tend to use these alongside a mineral test to assess whether copper's playing a part in someone's health issues. So it's things like PMS, fatigue and exhaustion. And bear in mind, like, I'm not saying copper is the cause of all of these for everybody, but these are the things that copper can contribute to. There are obviously other reasons for all of these as well. So PMS, fatigue and exhaustion, allergies, foggy brain, headaches and migraines, that's a big one. especially with the link with estrogen, mood swings, super sensitivity, you know, like feeling weepy for no reason, depression, like feelings of despair and hope and hopelessness, a racing heart, a pounding heart. Sometimes women will sort of say, you know, my heart just starts going really, really fast and there's absolutely no reason for it. And I feel anxious, but I don't know why. I've got nothing to feel anxious about. That can be copper. It can be other things as well. It actually can be a lack of potassium is a big contributor to that, and lack of magnesium, but copper as well, copper toxicity. We can have problems with concentration, having a short attention span, spaciness. It's actually linked to eating disorders as well. So anorexia is linked to high copper. Panic attacks, high anxiety, feeling, yeah, kind of unexplained anxiety. When you don't feel like you've got reasons to be anxious, then it's always interesting to look at copper. Yeast infections, so people with diagnosed with candida, always important to look at copper, because that if you've got lots of copper, you will find it very hard to get rid of the candida. Aching muscles and muscle cramps, mind racing, insomnia, interrupted sleep. Now, of course, again, loads of causes of that, but that can be one of them. Cysts as well, obsessive thoughts, and hypothyroid issues or suboptimal thyroid. Excess copper in the brain. So talking about the anxiety side of things, or the sort of, you know, racing mind, that kind of thing. When you have racing mind but exhausted body, that's also a sign of copper toxicity. Copper in the brain can have excitotoxic effects. Okay, so it overstimulates your brain cells, and stress exacerbates things by lowering zinc, because zinc deficiency makes copper toxic effects worse. Copper and zinc work in opposition. They what we call antagonize each other. So you won't see zinc high and copper low, or vice versa. You may actually see zinc and copper high on a test, but that means that you're low in copper. It's too hard to explain, but that's why reading a mineral test requires a deep understanding, because you can't just read the levels. But yeah, copper and zinc work together, and zinc is the other mineral that I'm going to talk about with regards to mental health. As I said, adequate adrenal function is required to make copper bioavailable. Bioavailable means that it can actually be transported and used and accessed. And we need to be able to transport it around the body, and a lot of the women that I work with have poor adrenal function, and this is part of the reason why there is often copper issues too, because of the adrenals not functioning as they should, and therefore something that the adrenal glands produce is required to actually mobilize copper around the body. And finally, on copper, it's a bit like an iceberg. You can't, when you look at an initial mineral test, you can't tell for sure how much is stored under the surface. You can't read a test at face value when it comes to copper, and so that's why symptoms and health history and everything else is so important, because the approach will be different whether you've got low or high copper. Okay, so we've talked about thyroid, and we've talked about energy production and the importance. We talked about the sex hormones and changes in hormones affecting our, menopause changes affecting our mental health, and how minerals play a part in that. And then we've talked about copper. The other main mineral that I always look at when somebody comes to me with issues with their mental health, whether that's low moods, anxiety, swinging moods, whatever, is zinc. Partly because it works in opposition to copper, and partly because it's also associated with so many mental health issues like depression, schizophrenia, ADHD and anxiety. So both copper and zinc should always be looked at if somebody is struggling with those things. It's been shown to actually reduce postpartum depression when somebody, so if somebody's got postpartum depression, zinc can be used. It can increase the effectiveness of SSRIs, so certain forms of antidepressants. It has a big impact on our hormones, and it's related on a mineral test to progesterone. So where estrogen and copper are very tightly linked, progesterone and zinc are very tightly linked. And of course, our hormones have such a big impact on our moods, as I talked about earlier. Low zinc on a test indicates low progesterone, and this is linked to low moods. Zinc is very important for thyroid function too, and a lot of women with depression also, as I said, have suboptimal thyroid function. And in fact, low testosterone in men is linked to depression as well, and it's also related to zinc deficiency. Zinc impacts our blood sugar, and swinging blood sugar can affect our moods and affect our sleep and our energy production and so on. Zinc is linked to the release of certain neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which in turn are related to our feelings of satisfaction and happiness. Should we supplement zinc? Not unless you know that what your zinc level is and what your other minerals are doing, because supplementing zinc can cause sodium to fall, which in turn affects the adrenals. So a lot of the women I work with, as I said, have got adrenal issues, and sodium is often very low. And so if you start supplementing loads of zinc, zinc pushes sodium lower. So not something that you want to just start doing, certainly not in large doses. So, you know, a little bit of 5 milligrams in a multivitamin probably won't do too much harm, but you certainly don't want to be doing the kind of, 15, 20, 30 milligrams that some people do, which, I've seen, and it causes problems. And if you have excess copper, as many with zinc deficiency do, it can cause what we call copper dumping when we supplement it. And, copper dumping is a very nasty thing to go through. It doesn't feel good at all. It will make you feel really bad. You can get zinc from lots of foods, and foods have far less impact on copper than supplementing. They won't cause copper dumping in the same way. Foods that are rich in zinc are things like seafood and mussels, oysters especially, and beef liver as well. If you can eat any of those. I can't bear any of them, so not something I'm going to be doing. But you can also get it from beans and seeds and meats, actually. Just red meat is high in zinc as well, so that's good sources too. If you're vegetarian or vegan, you've got to be really careful to make sure you're getting enough zinc from other sources. Okay, so to summarise, estrogen and progesterone balance plays a big part in our mental health and our moods, of course, but minerals impact on those hormones. So you should always be considering them alongside. Low energy and fatigue is linked to slow metabolism and poor adrenal and thyroid function in terms of especially low moods and depression. This means we've got to look at those key minerals. Whether we choose to go down the antidepressant route or not, we should always be looking at the root cause of our moods too and focusing on healing from there so that we have a longer term solution and don't just end up on meds for life. There are 2 minerals that I always look at when I run a mineral test on someone who is complaining of mental health or mood related issues, and that's zinc and copper. And as I said, zinc and copper are antagonists to each other, meaning they work in opposition with each other. We want them balanced. Having either of them out of balance can cause a multitude of mood and mental health issues. And finally, if you missed it this morning, I shared details of my menopause mineral package and with bonuses for anyone who signs up at the end of this month. This package was put together for those who want to get their minerals tested and understand what they actually mean for their health, both mental and physical. It's for those who are fed up with following advice that doesn't seem to be working or helping. Perhaps you've tried HRT and it hasn't worked, or perhaps it's worked for some things and not for others. Perhaps you don't want to try it. Perhaps you can't have it. Whatever the case, looking at your minerals is absolutely crucial. And I'll keep saying it till I'm blue in the face. Minerals are a game changer. They're the missing piece of the puzzle, and they are, as far as I'm concerned, compulsory if you want your body to function at its best. So it's a full test and analysis package. I go through your full health history and your current health status. I go through your food journal alongside your test results, and we have a one-to-one consultation to go through all of that and explain everything to you, and then you get a follow-on protocol for 3 months. You also get access to the Belly Buster method, which is my blood sugar course. It's not just for those who want to lose weight. It is really for most people, because I very rarely come across somebody who has not got blood sugar issues. And this week I have added, as I said, some extra bonuses too, including extended support if you sign up before the end of October, and also some extra guides as well to help you with your journey. You can find all the details in the link to the page with the package, depending on where you're watching this. If it's in my Facebook group, you'll see the link in the comments. And if it's on email, you just need to reply to the email and I'll share it with you if you don't already have it. If you're on Instagram, just comment MMM, which is Menopause Mineral Magic, and we'll share the link with you, because you can't post links on Instagram in the comments. Oh, you can't post them at all. They don't accept links. So anybody who's interested, if you have questions about it, just drop me a message, email me, or Facebook Messenger me, or Instagram Messenger me. The page that I've created has got lots and lots of detail. There's FAQs, there's lots of info. There's a video for you to watch to see what a test result looks like. But often, when you're doing something like this and it's new, you don't know what exactly it is. You might have questions that I haven't answered in the FAQs. Just ask me, I'll answer them and help you as much as I can. And if it's the right thing for you, then you'll know. All right. That was almost half an hour, a lot longer than I anticipated, but as you can tell, I'm passionate about this topic. And yeah, any questions, pop them in the comments. I can't see them on here, unfortunately. It doesn't bring them up. So I will answer them afterwards. I've got to jump on another, my weekly group coaching call. So I shall go now. All right. Have a great rest of day and rest of week. Take care. Bye for now.